Everyone to please rise for our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together this evening. Help us make sound decisions and direct us towards the accomplishment of our goals. We pray for you to bless and protect all the people of this city and all the people of this country. Guide us on the path to unity and harmony as we strive to serve you and your people. Pray these things in your heavenly name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's Tuesday, January 16th, 5:30 p.m., and I'll call this meeting of the Fergus Falls City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Here. 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 Here.
Here.
Here.
We have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or corrections, Andrew? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
That's your honor.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Darren, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. There are no public hearings this evening. There are no bids to award. Under petitions and communications, first item, we will receive an update on the library project fundraising. Jennifer Smedstead is here with us this evening.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. I'm here before you with some exciting news on behalf of the Foundation Advisory Committee. If you'll recall, in concert and in conjunction with each of you, we had established $3 million target for the private fundraising portion of this important library expansion. And we're so excited to report out that that amount has been achieved, still recognizing that the library construction grant remains outstanding. So it's a kind of a big day, I think, for the city of Fergus Falls with this exciting news. And it's really in thanks to each of you, your support of this important project, West Central Initiative Fund's partnership with us throughout this process, our fabulous executive director, Aaron Smith's leadership all the way through, and as well as so many businesses, organizations, and individuals, specifically including, and I think important to recognize, the Coles family, with the foresight and passion for lifelong learning and all that the library represents for our community. So that's the main portion of the discussion today. I think there might also be some questions about kind of the ongoing payment related to the outstanding grant amount. So I think to date what we have is $300,000 remaining to be delivered to the city for to be collected, and we're envisioning that to have some disbursements coming up in March, and in conjunction with Bill, that sounded like that worked, and the remaining on a quarterly basis over the next 5 years. So the last is to be collected in 2022. And as I think your experience shows with the ice arena, the people of Fergus Falls and the businesses and organizations there follow through with their commitments, and I expect no less here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is
Thank
there any
you.
questions from the council?
I just have a comment. I think, you and Aaron can probably remember those first few meetings of the foundation board when we were trying to determine how much we were going to ask for, and somebody threw out $2 million, and we all said, $2 million, boy. But so great job to everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think they deserve a big hand.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much for the work that you've done, and to Aaron for all the work that you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Fergus Falls Downtown Riverfront Council Project Downtown Renaissance. Steve Erickson, President of the Downtown Riverfront Council.
Good evening. The outline in front of you is the proposal that we looked at of how we might do some things to basically fill up the vacant storefronts and stabilize businesses that are downtown. It was a thought that came about after first reading about Target, then reading about City Bakery closing, and then realizing that Sherwin-Williams is moving out to the Kentucky Fried Chicken building, and then understanding that the Workforce Center is moving out. So there's quite a few vacancies that need to be filled. And I looked at it as if the city was a giant building, and so you had all sorts of different tenants in the building. My thought is that actually to the last 4 points is that we would identify and assist local emerging businesses to fill the vacant storefronts. We would assist existing businesses that are in need of technical or financial help. We would identify non-local business prospects and assist in relocating to Fergus Falls, and assist property owners, landlords to stabilize and improve their properties. Now, when I mean we, I'm looking at this as a collaborative effort. A lot of these pieces are already in place, but some people don't know about it. So what we wanted to do was to start making personal contacts with all of the business owners that we can, all of the tenants, identify who's a tenant, who's a property owner, what their business is, how do they fit into the plan. It was kind of interesting. I had a conversation with an individual who has what I'm going to say is an emerging business. It's a business that's already existing but not yet located into what I'll say is the permanent location. And I suggested that they look at a downtown location. And the answer was, well, you know, I just drove downtown the other night, and I saw at socials that there were cars parked throughout the lot. Drove down Lincoln Avenue, it was dark. I got to the VFW, and there was cars there. Got to the Eagles Club, and there were all sorts of cars there. Why was that? And it took me a minute to try to figure out that answer. And one of the answers is, well, many of the businesses that are there, if you, for example, the Workforce Center, they're not open in the evening. So those lights are going to be closed. I talked to another business today that's a restaurant business, and I said, why do you close so early? And the answer was, we can't afford to have staff be here until late hours because there's no business. Well, it sort of becomes a circular issue. Then we talked a little bit more, and the answer was, well, you know, we're thinking of having longer hours, but we need to remodel our property, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And I said, well, have you gone to the city's website? They have all sorts of different programs. And the answer was, you know, we own this business. We work here, we do all this stuff, we do the bookkeeping, and by the time I get home, I want to go to bed. I don't want to look at a website. And so I mentioned again the programs, and she said, well, that would be fantastic to be able to have access to that. So to me, this is a community effort. As I said, many of the programs are already in place. The city has, through the economic development, several different programs. West Central Initiative does. There are programs at Concordia College, numerous different loans, grants, and then there are some that exist with the private foundations. If we go through and we talk to everybody, and now we interrupt them and say, what are the positives and what are the negatives, and we try to deal with the issues one by one. You can divide them into different categories. The first issue is it a money issue? I'm a restaurant, I need to buy new restaurant equipment. Is there money available because I can't afford to do that otherwise? You look at that answer separately, and maybe it falls into economic development issues, and maybe there's a program that fits with it. So we would then direct that person to work with the Economic Development Authority, or that person ends up working with West Central Initiatives, or maybe there's a different solution to it. A lot of business problems are caused by lack of business knowledge. So they know how to bake bread, for example, but they're not sure how to deal with cash flow of the business. We also thought that by starting a mentor program, I don't know if all of you know about SCORE, but SCORE is a program that was started by the Small Business Administration about 60 years ago. They started out with a chapter in Minneapolis, and that's now expanded. The purpose of that organization was to utilize the skills of retired business people that can act as mentors at no cost to businesses, to small businesses and startup businesses. We want to start a SCORE chapter in Fergus. I've talked to the people about that at SCORE, and so we're working through that. But here's a list of the various different things, and I can read it or I can answer questions. But the idea was to understand the circumstances of what we have, react to each one, and hopefully that will get the job done. One of the things I mentioned in here is to establish collaboration with various economic development agencies. I talked about that. Identify sources of funding, that's pretty much the same thing. Establish links with educational institutions, for example. Is there a business course that's available? Is there not? Can one be established? We talked about the mentor program. And one of the other things that I think is important is to establish a liaison with the local real estate brokerage community. Why not offer a fee to the brokers that are here, that are out working, trying to make money? Maybe they're calling on businesses that are not in the city to bring them in here, and I know that's occurring. Maybe create a program that allows them to be compensated if that prospect locates in the city. So basically, this is the project that we'd like to do. We're trying to figure out all the different people that we would look at as partners, including the city. And then we would like to come back to you and make some recommendations. It might be asking for some money. It might be asking for some staff time. Not quite sure at this point. I know that some of this information, for example, what are the properties, where are they, who are the tenants, so forth, already exists, but I think we need some additional information to go along with that. So we might ask to develop a different type of spreadsheet. So that's basically what our project is, and the object is to fill up vacant space, stabilize businesses, and bring new businesses into downtown.
Thank you, Steve. Do you envision an initial task force to put this together, to a proposal back to the city or to the community, I guess?
I think what we'd like to do is try to, come back with, instead of just an outline, some better answers. I've got a meeting with West Central Initiatives. Steve Schoenig and I are meeting with them on the 31st. I want to see how their stuff fits in here. I want to talk with Amy to see how her stuff fits in here. As I said, we're already talking with SCORE. I'd like to talk with more representatives of the real estate industry here and a few more property owners, and then come back and say, this is what we think we ought to do.
Any questions? Good. Steve?
All right.
All right. Are you not looking for any action for us on this point, but you're going to come
No,
back with a...
I think, it would be nice if the city council endorsed what we're doing and trying to do, so that, I don't want to step on somebody's feet and assume that I know everything. So if there's questions about any of this, I want to make sure that that what we're proposing to do is acceptable to the city.
It's a question that kind of is developed out of this discussion. We talked about obviously getting a quote from a real estate agent for selling, some of the Port Authority projects. Where are we at with that?
The RFP is active right now.
Right.
Yep.
So.
Our goal will be come back in February with a recommendation.
Okay. Right.
That to me is a different issue. If you're offering a specific property that you want to deal with, that's one thing. But having a policy of, if you bring a business into town, they end up, building on one of the Port Authority pieces of land or something that the broker is paid. And maybe there's something that we could develop associated with encouraging the lease-up of the vacant buildings that are downtown too, so.
Do we have any other questions? Do we have if you're looking for an endorsement, do we want to?
I would make I made that endorsement. I make a motion that we endorse what they're doing and look forward to receiving more information.
I have a question, Your Honor, just for our attorney.
Did you second? I didn't see.
Second and question.
Yeah, go ahead.
As we have a lot of fire in the belly here, great program, great opportunities. Does our endorsement, and this is in no way a critique of what you're bringing, but does our endorsement bring with it any other complications, since this is a private citizens group that is working on something? I'm wholly in favor of it. I just don't know if there's any other. Are we endorsing everything that they do then from now on, or is it just, what are we endorsing?
I think I would use the term support.
I think that's a better word. I like that better.
Yeah,
So,
and I think I would use the term support, that you're supporting their efforts, and
I just offer to amend the motion to support.
You're offering a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
I'll accept that.
Who, did you second? Did you?
I think
Rod, so you're okay to second?
Yeah,
Amend your second.
yeah. Is that right?
Any other questions?
got that, Lynn?
It's a friendly amendment of support for the wonderful work they're doing.
Thank you, Steve. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is no open forum this evening. Under the consent agenda, there's a copy of the 7 items, 8, 2, 4, so that's 8 in the packet. Oh, there is 8 up there, got it. And there's a copy on the board as well. If anyone has any questions related to individual items, we can pull those off and discuss them. If not, I would entertain a resolution approving the consent agenda.
make that motion.
Thank you, Brent.
I'll second, Your Honor.
Thank you, Justin. Roll call, please.
Armisen.
Yes.
Speedo.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Pafford.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Hooper.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Resolution is approved. Under ordinances and resolutions, we will need a first reading of ordinance 66, 7th series, rezoning Pebble Shores Drive from RA to R1.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Jim. Item number 2, we will need a resolution approving the 2018 rates for the Pebble Lake Golf Course, and I believe Kevin is here to talk to us about that.
Greetings, Mayor, Council. I hope everybody's staying warm. You know, from the golf course, I was out in my office today and then looking out all the white and the frost and everything like that, and spring's coming.
Another 6 months.
I'm here to get to talk about the rates. We're not raising any of our rates for the 2018 season. Our daily rates, memberships, all that are staying the same, except for 4 key points, which is the new single pass holders, or new single membership, the single membership for 19 to 30-year-olds, which is one segment of our the part of the business that is missing in a lot of golf courses, is that key age group, which is what carries the membership into their older years also. And our new family membership also, we dropped those rates significantly, went from $500 to $399 a year. And the family went from $990 to $699 to entice the younger crowd out to the golf course. The only raise that we did was on our annual cart storage. The folks that leave their private carts in our storage facility, we just raised that according to our electricity costs. So, otherwise, everything else stayed the same. Daily rates as far as what you pay per round, green fees, cart rentals, driving range, all that stuff stayed. All those items stayed exactly the same as last year.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Your Honor?
Yes.
Which one was going down? I don't.
If you look on the second item down, single new pass holder,
Yep.
the single 19 to 30-year-olds, and the family new, Those three dropped from last year.
But it says $430 now?
There's two columns. You have a choice between paying monthly, which would come out of your bank account per month,
Yep.
or you'd pay it as a lump sum, which includes tax.
So what was it? Last year was 500,
Last year was $500.
796, no, what'd you say, 999? What was the family?
If you were a new family last year, you paid $990,
990.
and that went to $699.
Any other questions, Rod?
Just a question, I've raised this a couple times on, like some way to encourage a couple days where the citizens could have a really
Oh, yeah.
reduced rate, kind of a fun way to introduce them. Is that?
Something that I'm working on right now in the off-season is we're going to hold a Fergus Fall Welcome to the General Public Day at the golf course, and we're not even going to push golf. We'll have kids' activities, we'll barbecue hot dogs on the deck, and just get people out there to see how beautiful it is and whatnot. We're going to designate one night a week for 2 hours, free range balls, instruction by myself and some of our board members that play a lot of golf, and just walk people around a couple holes, play 1,
Great.
2, and 3, stuff like that. That'll be new next year. And then just a couple quick stats from last season that I have is we had just over 14,000 rounds played, and 6,700 of those rounds were out-of-town guests. I've been a member at the golf course since 1994, been on the board for over 10 years, and now this would be my third season, or coming into my third season. And one of the biggest hurdles that we're trying to overcome is the conception that there's 200 members out there that play it every day and nobody else comes to our golf course, and that is so wrong. And that's why we're going to invite the public out. And one other note on that is, in the end of May utility mailing, I'm going to have a personal invitation with a coupon that will go out to all the citizens. They'll get it in their water bill. So that'll be coming. Hopefully they'll get that in June and utilize it while their kids are out of school and stuff. My kids camp keeps growing, and I'm also joining a youth on the course program, which encourages 6 to 18-year-old youth to join the MGA. I'll sign them up through the Minnesota Golf Association, and they're able to come and golf whenever they want to. And that program will subsidize that program doesn't want youth to pay over $5 to play golf. And if we charge 10, that program will reimburse the golf course the difference monthly. So it's a no-brainer to join that club as well. So.
Well, I just think that, Kevin, you're a great addition to the golf course as a person, and you put a face on it and a welcome that I think is a great thing for us. So thank you for your hard work on this, and I think it's really turning around.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I think that we're going in a good direction.
Yeah,
definitely.
thank you.
Thank you, Rod.
Your Honor, I'll make the motion to accept the rates.
Resolution, how's that?
Resolution.
Got it? All right.
I'll second, Your Honor.
Thank you, Justin. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Speedo.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
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 Let's have these turned up.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you so much.
Item number 3 is a resolution authorizing the mayor and city administrator to execute the appropriate documents relating to Hoot Lake Companion Animal Hospital, Inc. for a Minnesota Investment Fund loan. Amy Baldwin.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. As indicated before you this evening is a loan request from Hoot Lake Companion Animal Hospital to support the financing of the acquisition of an existing business here in town, Companion Animal Hospital at 1505 West Lincoln Avenue. And the city staff has reviewed the loan documents prepared for the bank, anticipating a $75,000 city loan through the Minnesota Investment Fund loan pool, and is recommending support of this loan request. The loan would have a 10-year amortization with a 5-year balloon payment and an interest rate of 5.25%. In addition to the primary financing provided by Farmers State Bank, the other sources of funding would be the City of Fergus Falls at $75,000, West Central Initiative at $75,000, and owner equity of $10,000. The city would require a shared second position on business assets, equipment, and operations, a personal guarantee from the borrowers themselves, collateral life insurance assigned to the city, and our standard 1.5% origination fee. The owner does anticipate adding 2 additional staff to the practice and will be investing in new technology to provide some services that currently aren't available here in Fergus Falls. This is a market rate loan matching bank terms, and so it does not require a business subsidy agreement or a public hearing for the approval of the loan. And the real estate is also being purchased through separate financing by the new owner of the business itself. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on this request.
Any questions, Rod?
Your Honor, you could perhaps answer, how many veterinarian services do we have in Fergus that are operating?
Within the city limits, I believe it's just 2.
Mhm.
So that's- Yep. Yep.
And so when we do some things for one business or whatever, is there a sense of where we're giving an unfair advantage or anything like that?
Certainly, the other practice could come in if there's an acquisition of the business and the financials made sense. We would participate, assuming we had funds available. Mhm.
Sure.
West Central Initiative does look at those as part of their financing, the competition piece, but in this case, it wasn't applicable because it is an existing business as well. So we'd look more at it if it was a new practice coming in, that would be a competitive to the existing market.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? If not, is there a resolution authorizing the execution of this agreement?
I'll offer it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Tom.
Second it.
Thank you, Brent. Roll call, please.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Frida.
Yes.
Yes.
Capler.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Amy. This evening, we have claims in the amount of $1,430,991.12. And if there's any questions, we'll direct those to Finance Director Bill Sonmore. Not, is there a resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rod, second. Roll call, please.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Frida.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Capler.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Cooper.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Resolution is approved. There are no board, committee, or department reports this evening. Under L, reports from staff and administrative officers. First item will be regarding a resolution approving the 2018 lobbyist contract with Joel Carlson. Andrew, would you like to take that?
Yes, Your Honor, members of the council. Before you this evening is a proposal from Joel Carlson, who has been the city's lobbyist for the past 15-plus years, and certainly has worked on the regional treatment center issue for all of those years. This year's proposal is a little bit different in 2 ways. The first being the scope. In the past, it's been really just a single issue proposal. Last year, you recall, we worked on the regional treatment center. This year, his proposal is going to be all-encompassing, so he has agreed to, if we approve the contract, to work on all of the legislative priorities that we talked about in our work session and that we'll be talking about next year on the agenda. And then the second is obviously the price. Last year, the contract was for $32,000. This year, the way it's structured is we'd be paying $22.85 a month and then one payment of $16,000 for a total of $43,420. Certainly understandable that there is an increase in price based on the additional duties, and also just for the simple fact that last year's legislative ask of Mr. Carlson was to get the extension, and this year we're looking for new bonding money, so it's really started from the ground up. We've been working on this now for probably about 9 to 10 months in preparation of this session, and he's been doing a lot of legwork behind the scenes, coming to all the visits that we have with the different legislators, and has teed things up really well for the legislative session. So the legislative committee met and discussed this proposal last week, and as a committee, we are recommending that we move forward with Joel Carlson's proposal. And I'll just note that the money for the contract would come from Fund 207, which is the money from the state of Minnesota for holding costs related to the regional treatment center, and that's where we've taken these lobbying funds from for the past several years.
We're at a balance of about 287,000 in there right now.
I will offer that resolution.
Second?
Second discussion.
Your Honor, I just wonder if, should we be approving item 2 before we approve item 1? Just from an order point of view? Because we're going to approve a contract with Joel Carlson, and then we're going to approve the legislative priorities. Should we be doing it the other way around? You think
I don't know
that's-
that it matters.
Okay. But if we didn't approve this, the next one,
They had nothing.
I think what Anthony's saying, we're assuming we're going to approve
Yeah.
the next one, and that's an assumption we probably shouldn't make in order-wise. I don't think there's anything wrong with it either, but
Sure.
a little bit awkward.
Can we table?
Could we just wait and
Why don't you table it for
Let's
2
table
minutes?
this.
table it and approve that? Yeah.
Have the legislative priorities discussion. How's that sound?
thank you.
Can I take that one too?
We just need a motion to table that until.
I'll make that, Your Honor.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries, item is tabled. Andrew, would you like to take item number 2, the resolution adopting the 2018 legislative priorities?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. Our work session this evening was related to our legislative priorities. And as a legislative committee, we met last week to identify those priorities, and I'll just read them again for the sake of the audience real quickly. We've identified a main priority of the 2018 legislative session as the Regional Treatment Center bonding request, and that will be tied to the now 2 items from now on the agenda, so hopefully that order works for Mr. Hicks. No, and our secondary priorities involve an LCCMR extension or modification for the dairy property, which we've talked about previously. Downtown Opportunity Enterprise Zone, different dairy property funding options, including bonding or special legislation, lobbying for funding of various deed programs, exploring the concept of the local option sales tax being applicable to online purchases, and we talked about the benefits of that at the earlier work session. And then also just the various initiatives of the League of Minnesota Cities, Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, et cetera, and anything that this body would identify throughout the session that comes up. So that's where we landed, and nothing changed at the work session.
Your Honor, I would offer that resolution.
Thank you, Jim.
Second?
Thank you, Tom. Any discussion? Yes, Rob.
This is for Mr. Bremseth. As things come up and we have this contract, and, sounds like there's some flexibility there, for adjusting, obviously,
Yes, yep.
and we're pretty comfortable with that.
Yes, and the mayor and I had a conversation with Joel Carlson on Friday related to more of the regional treatment center stuff that's in progress, but we posed the question, can we take on multiple things this session? And as we alluded to earlier, he certainly, to use Ben's phrase, he said we could walk and chew gum at the same time. So he is comfortable with the flexibility. He said, probably curb your expectations of some of these secondary priorities, especially something like the local option sales tax, as we're just starting to explore the concept. But he's certainly comfortable with bringing multiple things forward and having to adjust on the fly. So I am comfortable with that.
Quite honestly, I think we'd all agree that they're going to get used to seeing us down at the state capitol, because there's a lot of projects we're going to ask for state help. I think it's Tom said, if you don't ask for it, you don't get it, and I think we need to be more aggressive in those communities that are down there regularly, are the ones that are getting stuff. So I think we have an aggressive agenda, and I'm excited, I am very excited to carry it out, so. We have a motion, or a resolution in a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Speedo.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Pepper.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Hoover.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
And I will redo my motion on item number 1. And my resolution, offering of the resolution on item number 1 for Mr. Hicks.
Redo my second? Do I have to untail my table?
It's just, you're approving to spend something that you don't have an agreement on what you're going to spend it on. So it's just a point of order. So-
We got it.
Point taken, point well taken.
Great
Any
point.
further discussion?
Great point.
Just a point.
Roll call, please.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Speedo.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Pepper.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Hoover. Thompson.
Yes.
The resolution is approved. Item number 3 is the 2018 legislative strategy bonding request relating to the regional treatment center. Andrew, are you want to start off?
Yeah, I'll just kick it off, Your Honor, members of the council. Before the new year, we had Joel Carlson up and we had a work session about the legislative ask, and you guys asked us to come back with what we thought we could accomplish in the next 2 years, what those costs would look like. And Brian and Bruce have been working hard on this, and there's 5 options in front of you. And I don't know, Brian, if you want to start, or if we're going to turn it over right to Bruce, and he can walk us through them. And then the ultimate goal of the conversation tonight is to have a direction from the council for the legislative session, so we can begin implementing that as early as the bonding tour later this week. So take it away, Bruce.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and city council members. Option number 1, and I'll preface this, buildings 2, 11, and 30 are included in every one of these options. They are currently included in Phase 1 demolition, which bids on Thursday, but they're alternates. So until we know how the prices come in and whether or not any of the alternates get awarded, I've kept them in these options along with the price associated with the removal of those 3 buildings. So option number 1 that you've got is based on what we're currently looking at for Phase 2 demolition project, which is removing building 3, which is the auditorium, which is a non-contributing building, was built at the same time as building 2 was built in the early 60s, along with building 25, which is the kitchen building, and building 32, which is the power plant. And then taking down the connecting links to separate buildings 23 and 27 from the rest of the campus. And that estimate is $5.9 million.
Question, Bruce.
Yes.
Just so as we go through these different ones, I know there's mothball. Can you define the mothballing in this? Is it the same as the mothballing that, I mean, I know it's updated numbers, but the same extent that we talked about over the last several years?
That's correct. Yep. The mothballing is basically stabilizing the exterior to prevent vermin and water intrusion into the building, and then provide some level of air movement to keep the air quality from deteriorating inside the building.
Thank you.
And option number 2.
Your Honor, can I ask a question? Do you actually use mothballs?
Nope.
Okay.
I guess we could, but we don't. Option number 2 basically is what we've discussed about moving forward to basically only keeping building 1, 23, and 27 remaining on campus. And that estimate is $8.2 million. Option 3 is going further to only retaining building 1, taking down buildings 23 and 27, and that estimate is $8.9 million. Option 4 is doing basically the same thing as option 3 of only keeping building 1 on site, but taking a step further, instead of just doing mothballing on building 1, is to do a full restoration. And that would include complete remodel inside, bringing it back to its historic status. Some of the things would be replacing windows, redoing the floors. Several areas inside the building have experienced water intrusion, and so the floors are pretty wavy, and doing that replacement, then replacing exterior windows, and then reconstructing the porte cochere and the front entrance to bring it back to what it was when it was built in 1895. And that estimate is $27.2 million.
Question.
Yes.
Difference between 2 and 3, the mothballing or the demolition of 27 and 24, it's only $700,000. Is that because of the cost of mothball? I mean, I know it's a combination of them, but is it the high cost of mothballing, or is it the discount you'd get by having all that demolition packaged as, one. Do you understand my question?
Yep,
There's only $700,000 difference between,
right. And that's basically eliminating the costs to do the mothballing on 23 and 27.
which is pretty substantial.
Pretty substantial just because of the deterioration on both of those buildings.
Okay.
And then the final option is basically doing a clean sweep of the site. And that is at 8.7 million.
I think they're having problems hearing that microphone.
Try talking to it really close to that microphone.
Can you hear me now?
It's like you have to touch it.
Okay.
All right. So what questions does the council have for Bruce at this point, looking at the first five?
Do you think the legislator would have appetite for 27 million?
I can. Your Honor, members, Councilmember Hicks, I asked Joel Carlson that question for his professional opinion, and he recommended we didn't go down that road. So, you know, he's of the mindset that the restoration of the tower is going to be viewed by legislators as more of a local project, which would require some local match, whereas the others are really still part of that problem that falls back to the state. So he was recommending that if we're going to do restoration of the tower, that that's at another time, and it's through a different process than the one that we're doing right now.
So that eliminates option 4, Your Honor.
Yeah, I think option 4 is probably eliminated. I would agree.
And the other thing, before we dive into the,
And we can eliminate option 5, I think, as well.
can I add something, Your Honor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Bruce if he could, I posed the question to Bruce, what can we accomplish in 2 years? And I thought your answer was a good one, and it was any one project. So what does that look like? And you can expand on that, but I thought your answer was a really good one.
Yep, thanks. I've had several conversations with Rolf Anderson, who will be part of our team at the request of SHPO because of his extensive knowledge of the project. And he is recognized by SHPO as an architectural historian to participate in any one of these options to provide documentation, defining what the history of the building is and its significance and how it relates to the entire campus as part of a submission that needs to go with the EAW report for any one of these options. Based on the way that SHPO is currently reviewing this project, they are taking their full 30 days every time something is submitted to them, and when they reply and need a response, they start their 30-day review process from the time that we respond back to them. So my concern is that, as I'd indicated to Brian and Andrew, I think we can do any one of these options and get it completed in the next 2 years. I don't think we can do 2 options and get them completed in the next 2 years. So that's.
Right.
On the, thank you, Your Honor. On the items that we're requesting, if we request them all at one time, then does the 30-day, 60-day, all those periods, do they kick in immediately, or can they string them out so that they're, you know, they're approving one thing and then another thing, and you know what I mean? Can we actually get SHPO to act on a very wide range of things if we ask at once? Do you understand my question? Is that a fair?
I think anytime there's a give and take back and forth, it restarts the clock. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
That's the
So if we're
problem.
clear,
Asking questions.
if we're clear when we ask that first ask, that's very important, is what you're saying, right?
Yep. And so, you know, however we want to proceed, whether we choose to stay with the current option, Phase 2 demolition of just buildings 3, 25, and 32, and the connecting links, we can pursue that. If we want to move further with option 2, or option 3, we can do that as well. And I think we can get that accomplished to allow us to get the project out for bidding and get the contracts awarded and get the work completed in 2 years.
One other follow-up, Your Honor. If our appetite is to take a large step forward and ask at one point, and is the legislative committee, you think, are you all comfortable with that kind of an approach? Because if you're going into a deal, you want to make sure you make a good ask up front and make sure it's clean and clear, you know, and if they don't give it to you, that's fine, but if we have that appetite, I guess I'm asking, is that going to be okay with your lobbyist legislative committee to work hard on that if we ask for a big ask up front?
I mean, whether we'll follow through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the will of the council is the will of the council, is what I would say. I mean, if the council's directing us to do is what we're gonna go down there and work towards getting the council.
That's Tom and you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think
It
from,
may take more if we take a big ask up front. It may take more legwork.
well, I think too, just to add to that is, I think Joel stood in front of us and said that we should have a timeline on the whole ask, not that we're asking for it all now, but let them know that our phased timeline and or approach, I think that needs to be in the conversation too, whether it's how we structure that. I mean,
Just, yeah, I think that's a good question, and I want to ask a question on that one, just to be fair, so we have everything on the table. The $700,000 difference between 2 and 3, just to keep, you know what I'm talking about, to keep buildings 24 and 27?
Yep.
Any idea in today's, if we did have to go back and ask as a further phase, is that's gonna cost more than $700,000?
to come back and,
Come at, you know what I mean, to say, okay, well, here's the next phase we're gonna ask for 2 years from now.
Yes, it will cost more. I don't know
I know you don't know
exactly that
exactly,
much.
but it's safe to say
Um,
that that's more than a $700,000 project, if it was a standalone project. Maybe not considerable, okay.
Not a considerable amount.
Okay, so there's not a big savings or difference or anything, so I think it's something we need to
Yep.
consider.
Mobilizing would be the biggest part of that, I would imagine,
Yes.
because if you're there now, you're mobilized, you take the whole works all in one shot.
Correct.
If you take just part of it, you have to come back and remobilize again, and that's expensive.
Yep, I agree. Thank you.
But if we're worried about trying to, some of the people still want to save the east and west detached. If we were to say, go with Plan 3, where they're going to take it all down except for the main tower, can it be done in such a fashion where east and west detached are the very last part of that project? So in case something were to come up, you get somebody who comes forward, or something changes, we can still at that point say, okay, something has changed and we want to keep these 2 buildings, but they haven't been taken down yet.
That could certainly be done just by putting that into the documents as part of the bidding documents, that 23 and 27 are the last to be removed.
That way, it still leaves it open in case, there are some people who want to save it. And if it becomes an option where all of a sudden everybody sees, okay, these things are going down, we really want those buildings, we better move fast, we better have our ducks in a row. And then all of a sudden they're saying, okay, well, we're getting ready to bulldoze them, and somebody actually did come forward. I don't foresee it happening, but if it were to happen, then the buildings are still standing there with the option to be able to say, hey, we're willing to go, you've got all your stuff, and it looks good. If not, then they come down.
Right. Yep.
Your Honor, it would be hard to put a dollar amount to it, but that uncertainty would add some price to the contract. I mean, the contractors wanting to know what the job is going to be, and if you pull that work away and the paycheck goes down, their mobilization costs and some of those other things are likely going to reflect that any uncertainty you can remove when you're awarding a contract is going to help you get the best price that you can get. So keep that in mind. I mean, it's possible,
Yeah.
but I think you would see some additional cost if you were to structure something like that.
Yep, I would agree. Because that's basically going to force them to working in the center where they, you know, and I don't know construction means and methods and how they would plan on mobilizing if they want to start at one end and just work their way to the other end, or exactly how they would do that. But there probably will be some cost increase to the project to direct the contractor to doing certain pieces at a certain time.
You're on. After, Jim's got a question, then after.
Question, can that be added as an addendum? To put that in there so we could see what that difference would be?
Absolutely. The verbiage could be written in there to, you know, if we asked the contractor to not take down 23 and 27 until the very last, how does that impact their schedule and fee?
I mean, if we're gonna do that, that should be written that way so that we know up front what the difference is gonna be.
Sure.
I think, I'll go ahead, Anthony, I know you had a question.
Yeah, a couple of questions. I mean, a sense, obviously, we talked before about kind of doing phases and obviously having, you know, the opportunity if somebody wanted buildings. Now we're obviously moving away from that to be basically an all or nothing. I mean, do you think that SHPO is going to be, you know, how long will it really take SHPO to review, you know, if you chose option 3, you know, how long is it going to take SHPO to actually work through all of that? I mean, I deal with agencies a lot, and I know it takes forever. I mean, literally forever.
In all of their review guidelines, they have 30 days to review every time we do a submittal, and our submittals are required at 30, 60, and 90% construction documents. Part of this is also going to include preparing and submitting the EAW report, and with the EAW report will be all of the historic significance of each one of the buildings that are to be removed included with that. So there's a time period that needs to be realized, and I had conversation with Rolf Anderson this morning. He's trying to schedule a conference call with the folks from SHPO to find out what their schedule is. He wants to meet with them on site to take a quick look at the buildings, to understand what they're looking for from him for documentation for the EAW to define the character and significance of each of the buildings, so that he only has to do it once, and so that we can streamline this process as much as possible. I'm currently thinking we probably got 8 or 9 months before we get to being able to issue the drawings for bidding, with going through the review processes with SHPO, and expecting that at the 30% review, I'm going to get a comment letter that's going to require a response. And then as soon as I get that response, my plan is to submit the 60% document so that they're doing 2 reviews at the same time to try and expedite that. But the EAW report's what's going to take the majority of the time to get through that with SHPO, and that's why we have Rolf Anderson participating.
Is it possible for, obviously, the legislative committee and Joel to ask the state to put language in any bond funding that would, you know, sort of make SHPO actually responsive to questions? I mean, I you know, as I say, I deal with the MPCA, and I know how they basically they can stall something by just continually asking a question about something that you've already answered once. Mm-hmm. And that 30-day review, you know, and so you can run this clock. I mean, if it was a football game, the Vikings would still be playing. So,
Andrew, did you have a response?
Yeah. The answer is no, because state and federal statute gives them the ability to have those 30-day periods, and a language in a bonding bill is not going to override that statute. But I will say, earlier on the consent agenda, we authorized the city to enter into an agreement with the attorneys from Kennedy and Graven, and that is the purpose of having them on board, is to make sure that we efficiently can navigate that process, and that we follow the process so there's no additional steps, and that they'll hold them accountable so we can move, like I said, as efficiently as possible through that.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. So, as I understand it, EAW has in its own a timeframe that has to be played out.
Yes.
So they can't violate that, even SHPO can't really violate that, unless an EIS would come into play. Now, can they do an EIS? Can SHPO request an EIS or someone else in the midst of this process, which is a much more involved question for us?
Yeah, I guess they could request that. I don't know that there's any validity to, I think we could refute the need for doing an environmental impact study, because the site is contained and because the site is pretty much level. There is no negative impact to the surrounding properties if these buildings were removed and it was all green space. So I think that typically is the main issue with an environmental impact study, is because it's creating a negative impact either on the property by doing some removal, or it's creating a negative impact on adjacent properties. So, yep, they could certainly request that, and that might add a few weeks or even a month to the schedule of working through to refute that. But so far, working with SHPO and trying to make sure that we're being responsive as quickly as possible when they submit questions, is they are responding either right on the 30 days or only a day or two after the 30-day period is ended. And sometimes that ends up on a weekend, and that's why it ends up being a couple days longer. But so far, they're following their guidelines.
One comment to Anthony's point, when we originally talked about a phased deconstruction plan, I think part of it was because we were going to entertain any development proposals that came along during that deconstruction, during that phased deconstruction. And so it would seem to me, as Joel mentioned, I think a couple weeks ago, that if we're truly sincere about that rather than putting it all on there, just tacking on at the end as add alternates, let's, if we're sincere about trying to say east and west attached, that we put that up front in the ask, I would think, rather than putting it all on there and having deducts so that in case someone comes out of nowhere to, I don't know that anyone's going to pursue redevelopment of a property that's on a demo. I mean, they could, it's possible, but I think what we ask for, I think, is what we should ask for, rather than having a bunch of different scenarios of stuff that may or may not happen down the road. I think that just complicates things to a point that, so that would be my one comment on that. So we all agree that 4 and 5 are off the table, right?
Yeah.
So that leaves 1, 2, 3.
And I would suggest that one's off the table from my perspective.
I would agree one thing.
Anyone disagree that they don't want to talk about, or, I'm sorry, that they don't want to take one off the table? Okay.
And I won't make any secret of it. I mean, I vote number 3. I think from what I was told over and over again when I was out knocking doors, I mean, this is, people want to be done with this, people want it gone, and then they want to keep the tower. So I'll just get that out there.
And they would I would reiterate that. I mean, I had lunch today with somebody, and that was, that was part of the discussion, that, they feel that this has been, a crippling issue for the city, and that's, it's one of the reasons why we can never move forward. So we have to make a decision. So I would say that I will be voting for 3.
I would go as far as to offer a motion that we approve Plan 3.
I will second it.
Discussion?
The question, Your Honor, from your perspective and the legislative committee, I think in December 16th or 18th, you raised the question in our work session about the combining of the phases. And you feel comfortable with that at this point, in light of everything else that we can go through with that?
Yeah. I think I've been clear for 9 months. My preference is definitely to save 27 and 23. I mean, personally, I think those are 27 and 23 are definitely the most historic buildings on that campus. They're the first ones that are built. I think that I understand the reasoning of wanting to go down to just to 1, but I think realistically what we can get done, I know Bruce said we can get it all done. Anyway, long answer to a simple question. I'm going to support whatever the council does. I'm going to bring that to St. Paul. But personally, I definitely think that east and west attached to make that campus, keep it historic, is where I would like to see things.
And, Your Honor, if I may, I mean, I agree with you, that it would be great if we could keep as much of it as possible. But I mean, I think looking at the past and what we've been through over and over and over again, I think just crossing our fingers one more time that if we keep them, that something might happen. There's not any patience for that, so I don't disagree with you that I'd like to see them saved, but I think this is just something we need to take a decisive action on and be done with it and move forward.
Well, I just would disagree in the sense that I don't think it's just crossing your fingers and wish something happened. We have not had 23, 27. We've talked about a phase deconstruction all along to say, we've had interest in these buildings from developers, but they don't want, we've heard all along, that's why we developed the phase deconstruction in phases, not in one fell swoop, it's gonna go all the way down to the tower. So I get that if that's where they wanna go, but I do think that goes against what we talked about, and it goes against what our lobbyist said 2 weeks ago to us too, that he thinks that, to be sincere to what we originally proposed to SHPO and to the people in the community, we did talk about a phase deconstruction to get it down to something that was manageable, that we could, let that play out. And we're not saying, that's why I asked the question to Bruce, that we're not coming back for this funding. Let the legislature know up front that, if we don't have development, we'll put our neck out there for the tower, but that's all that we feel that the city can do. So anyway.
I think there is opportunity because this isn't going to happen tomorrow. I mean, so this is realistically 18 months to 2 years out. So, I think, we can still accept a proposal from anybody that wants to buy a building and repurpose it. So I think, we can still, like, if somebody wants to come along and take on board Building 23, knock yourself out. I mean, I think, because literally between now and, A, we've got to get it through the legislative, and B, we've got to get it through SHPO.
Correct.
And then we issue a contract for demo. Well, if somebody's come along and taken a building, then that's good news.
So again, just to follow up, whatever the council initiates, that's what I'm going to do my best to carry out. Whether exactly what I agree with or not, it's the will of the council. I think we should change that to a resolution.
Okay, I'll offer the resolution to proceed with Plan 3.
And I don't remember.
Anthony.
I'll second that.
Darren.
I will say that the say as I do and do as I say, the phase thing, I do like to have seen a little bit better following of that. With that being said, though, let's move on.
Yeah, I'm going to go back and change my mind now. upon something and say, maybe we should put those 23 and 27 as deducted.
As what?
As the alternates, like, I argued against a minute ago.
Are they not
But
in there?
that's just paperwork, right? That's just,
Absolutely.
That's just that's just a paperwork adjustment, isn't it?
Yep, it's just how we define the scope of the work. The base bid would be everything except buildings 23 and 27, and then we have an alternate for demolition of building 23 and an alternate for the demolition of building 27.
I would like to see that, too.
And Your Honor, members, I would just reiterate too that this is what we're asking the legislature for funding for. Any decisions are going to be brought before this body again. You know, any construction documents would have to be approved by the council and any contracts. So we're not voting tonight to tear down everything but the tower. We're voting to go to the legislature seeking $8.9 million because that's what it costs to do what this option is. So just for clarification.
So just a question, when Joel was here, I thought he said obviously a timeline and a phased approach, because I think he referenced that the legislation would want to see you have an option or an opportunity to restore part of that. And there was more of an appetite for that than save the whole campus. Am I on the right page with that comment? And my concern only would be with going through this approach, although I do agree we need to go with the ask. I would like to see 23 and 27, and my only concern, I guess, would be is if we're going down with the ask to demo them, is that going to not be as well in our favor, because we did go with our intent to, you know, redevelop the campus or parts of the campus, to kind of your point, Ben. I mean, that's what we kind of asked, but now wasn't that part of the conversation when Joel was here, was there'd be more of an appetite for them to help you with selective demolition in a timeline? Must be wrong. Everybody's looking at me like I'm in left field here.
That's one of the things that he said. Obviously, we can do what we want to do, but I think he just made mention of that, just the phased approach. Again,
And the other part of that conversation with Representative Carlson was how much can we get accomplished in 2 years?
Correct.
And so we're kind of trying to work this from both ends of, you know, how much can we do in the next 2 years to make it reasonable when they ask for the funding to see it's completed within a certain time frame? How much can we put into that package? So,
I just got one other question to follow up, and I know we have a resolution, probably we got a call for the answer question, but
No, just as many questions as we.
in the conversation, what you just alluded to, Andrew, is this is the ask to the legislator. We'd be coming back with potential those alternates, so we would know what potential the alternate for 23 or 27 would be, and at that point in time, if as a council it made sense, we could look to alter the ask, or I mean alter our plan of selective demolition.
You'll know, Your Honor, Councilmember Arneson, you'll know at the end of the legislative session what money you have to work with, if any. I mean, there's a possibility that we're not successful. We just have to be clear on that. And then from there, the council can decide how they want to bid the project, or if they
Correct.
want to proceed with bidding the project, and then ultimately how they want to award the project based on the bids that are received and the funding that's available, and however we want to structure it. I mean, we really have the latitude to do anything within those boundaries.
absolutely.
And we're a ways from that. We got to get the ask first, and then we can structure it how we need. Fair enough.
Your Honor, in defining the ask, I mean, obviously, if we're asking for $8.9 million, you know, what other kind of provisions are we going to put or ask for in terms of concessions? Are we going to ask for in the sense of, you know, obviously how long are we going to, you know, because you know, the sense I get from talking to, you know, Bill and Bud is that we're not going to get, you know, multiple extensions and extensions on extensions. And so, you know, I think in order for us to have a clear ask, you know, we also, you know, need to kind of establish some other things like, you know, we'll get this accomplished in 5 years, or, you know, we have to have something that says where we're giving them something that we're not going to ask for extensions. that we're on a use it, lose it program. If we don't use it and we don't demo the buildings, then the buildings belong to the residents of Fergus Falls, and it's their problem at that point. And I also think that we should ask them, if somebody does come along and want to take on building like 23 and 27, the money that was allocated for them for the demolition, would the state look to still grant that as some form, or is there a program that we could have where that money could be used in terms of probably sales tax rebate or something? So that, because one of the other problems that has been, there's been really no money from the state to encourage a developer to come along. And I know that makes the ask more complex, but I think it's not as complex as, it's only as complex as we want to make it. But I think if we're giving them something that says, right, we will get this, subject to SHPO, of course, in there, we will get this accomplished within this timeline, and the only reason we won't is because of perhaps a state organization that holds us up. Because equally, there'll probably, there's other state agencies that might pop up too. So, but I think we also have to discuss that. I mean, what's the time period of this, of what we're actually looking to accomplish?
They're going to want to spend
Yeah.
2 years. I mean,
Right.
that's what they're
I
going
mean, yeah. So I mean, and that's it. Is that the ask?
Your Honor, bonding projects are generally 2 years, because then in 2 years they have the next bonding bill. So that's why it's really important. You'll see some of these large, like road projects, they break them up into phases, what can be accomplished before they have to bond, because the state doesn't want to take on the debt if the money's not going to be spent in the next 2 years. So that's really where that 2-year thing from Joel is coming from, is that's the natural timeline of a bonding project. To answer the second part of your question, if we were going to use the money for anything other than its intended use, we would have to get legislation to that effect. But the bonding money is not eligible under state statute to be spent in some of the manners you suggested. I think they're good suggestions, but the legalities of what bonding monies can be spent on would not cover enticement of developers or anything that would work towards the developer's favor. When we present this to the legislature, we're asking, we're certainly going to be clear as to what the plan is, but we're asking for a dollar amount. And so if something in the plan changed, let's say building 24 and 27 were developed, it doesn't reduce the amount of money that we have to work with, because they're not allocating money per specific buildings, they're going to allocate to the whole project. So we would still have, if successful, the $8.9 million to spend within the project. And if you don't spend it, the state uses it to pay back the bonds or whatever. But
Just to, I guess, a comment on I think I agree with Councilman Rufer in terms of the will of the people. I think there has been a shift in that will since I came on the council, 3 years ago, some plus. And I see that shift happening, and the fatigue of the populace with this issue. And I see us having tried our very best to do this. So this is one of those tough decisions for me, where I would personally vote against Site Plan 3 and stick with that phased approach. At the same time, I'd like us to make sure that we don't leave the citizens with anything that we are going to be really sorry about not asking for this time. And, so I think I'm going to be voting against my personal preference on this, because I believe the will of the populace has shifted to the point where we have to make a decision now and move forward. And that also is in light of what we've done on the master plan downtown and the river and other projects. I don't believe we're a large enough city to entertain continual options on and on and on. We have to put our emphasis on one syllable, and we have to do it in a way that I think the people say the council's going to do this now. And I don't, so I really feel that's, I'm just saying where I'm at. And so if I vote on this, that's why I'm voting that way, because I really think there's been a shift, and that we have to do the full ask when we ask now.
So you're in favor of 3 years?
I am in favor. I'm saying I'm split, but I'm speaking that practically, I will vote for that because that's what the populace, I believe, has shifted to. But in my personal opinion, I would rather take a longer time, but we don't always have the luxury of personal opinion in a public office, so I think that's where I'm at, so.
Thank you, Rob. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Armisen.
Yes.
Speedo.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Alpert.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Hoover.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Resolution is approved. There's no old business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Hunter? Oh, unfinished, but I just wondered if the next, could we get an update at some point on the Buse Township? I think Councilman Fish was going to look into the annexation questions, and maybe I haven't heard, but
I wasn't at the last meeting. I was with my daughter, so.
Right, I mean,
Gordon-
I'm just wondering where we're at
We'll
on
get an
that.
update. We'll try to get an update from Gordon at the next committee meeting. How's that sound?
And I mean, I'm glad to step in and help on that, even though it's my ward area, if it is, I mean, you know, we all have different things come up, and I have sympathy for that position of, you know, Councilman Fish, so I just want to say, if we need to do anything else, I'm glad to be involved in that. But,
Thank you, Rob.
yeah.
If there's no more unfinished business, any other unfinished business, just a couple announcements. The next committee of the whole meeting is Wednesday, January 31st at 7:31. I'm sorry, 7 o'clock on January 31. February 5th, the city council meeting at 5:30, and then February 8th is the state of the city at the Big Wood Event Center at 12 noon. With that,
I got one.
Guy?
Yeah, we're monitoring 3 active water main leaks right now. And one that might cause a little bit of a traffic problem is on Union Avenue between Lincoln and Cavour. So I say might, tongue in cheek. So we're gonna repair that one tomorrow. And traffic will be maintained through the area, but just a note to the residents, please be cautious when driving through there.
Mr. Mayor, this weekend, Sunday, 2 to 4, Lake Alice ice skating. Be there. Won't conflict with the Vikings game this time, so the noon Kiwanis ice skating, 2 to 4, Lake Alice.
Speaking of that Lake House, there's, you want to just give it, there's a ski trail that's groomed on Lake Alice.
Yeah, the DNR has graciously used their equipment and actually done the grooming for a ski trail on Lake Alice. So thanks to the DNR, and we've got the skating path that's been cleared around the lake also.
Yeah, so as we work into having more trails groomed by the city, at least we're working with the DNR this year to have them groom it when they can.
Your Honor, we should just acknowledge that the crews of the city that actually fix these water mains, you know, I mean, we've had obviously a slew of kind of bursts, and you know these guys are out at 4 o'clock and midnight, and 5 o'clock in the afternoon and 10 o'clock, and so you know we should just make sure that
Ideal weather.
Yeah.
And also maybe to acknowledge that if our roads aren't getting salted and sanded immediately, it could be because everyone is working on digging up the street.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
bear with us.
just send our thanks to them.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks.
That will be adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.